Indigenous rights and environmental stewardship are increasingly important topics in today's world. Indigenous peoples around the world are struggling to protect their rights to land, culture, language, and autonomy, while simultaneously facing the challenge of protecting their traditional lands and waters from environmental degradation. This article will explore the intersection between these two struggles, highlighting the ways in which Indigenous rights and environmental stewardship are interconnected. The first point to make is that Indigenous peoples around the world have a long history of living in harmony with their environment. Traditional knowledge and practices have enabled them to use the resources of their land in sustainable ways, ensuring that the land and its resources can be passed on to future generations. In many parts of the world, Indigenous peoples are the original stewards of their lands and waters, and their traditional knowledge and practices are essential to maintaining a healthy, balanced ecosystem. However, Indigenous peoples' rights to their lands and waters are often not respected, often due to colonial and neo-colonial policies. This has resulted in widespread destruction of traditional lands and resources, as well as displacement of Indigenous peoples from their ancestral homelands. The lack of recognition of Indigenous rights has had a devastating impact on the environment. As traditional land uses are replaced by unsustainable industrial practices, it is essential that Indigenous rights are respected in order to protect and preserve the environment. This means that Indigenous peoples must be given the right to their ancestral lands and waters, and their traditional knowledge and practices must be respected. Furthermore, Indigenous peoples must be provided with the resources and support they need to protect their lands and waters from environmental degradation. Finally, it is important to recognize the role that Indigenous communities can play in environmental stewardship. Indigenous peoples have a deep connection to the land and its resources, and their traditional knowledge and practices can provide invaluable insights into the best ways to manage resources sustainably. Furthermore, Indigenous peoples' traditional governance systems often provide an effective framework for decision-making and conflict resolution, which can be applied to environmental management and stewardship. In conclusion, Indigenous rights and environmental stewardship are closely intertwined. The recognition and protection of Indigenous rights is essential for protecting the environment, as is the respect for Indigenous traditional knowledge and practices. Indigenous peoples must be given the resources and support they need to protect their lands and waters from environmental degradation, and their traditional governance systems can provide an effective framework for environmental stewardship.